Back, and now it's time for our first segment, which is going to be a really informative and interesting and a panel discussion with some fabulous women in STEM and in First Canada. So let's introduce. Starting off, we have a bunch of members of our youth council. Starting off with Julia from Team 7456, the Orobots. Hello, Julia. Welcome back to the show.
Hi.
And we also have Namira from Team 7480, the Machine Mavericks. Nice bucket hat there. Namira, you want to show off what the bucket hat says?
Yep. It's got the whole logo on it, and we're repping the youth council merch. Mahak, where's yours?
Very nice. Mahak's got the hoodie on, so we got all sorts of good stuff. We also have Riddy from Team 5036, the Robo Devils. What up, Scarborough?
Hi.
Glad you could be, start with all weekend long. Wayne Simmons scored 2 goals. The weekend at the Super Bowl halftime show. Now Riddy on First Canada Live. I'm on First Canada Live. It's all good stuff. And we got Maria from Team 7712. Hello, Maria. Also rocking the bucket hat. And also we have a very special guest, not on the Youth Council, but just as cool, the co-chair of the First Canada Girls in STEM Advisory Council, and from Lakeside Process Controls, Natalie Wood is here.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Natalie. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So today's segment is really cool because we have a bunch of, exciting and brilliant minds here to discuss some big issues. And we're going to be discussing terminology and statistics around gender equity and holding a meaningful discussion about adversity and allyship. And then Natalie's going to be talking to us about the Dads for Daughters campaign, which I think it's really important for us to learn about because they're doing some really, really cool stuff. And we're also going to be giving a little bit of a sneak peek of some of the women in science who would be featured on the First Canada social media over the next few days in this great celebration. So I think I'm going to throw it over to Namira, and maybe we'll get their slides up on the screen and we'll take a look and start this discussion.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much, Karthik. I think we're all very much excited to be here today, and we're so excited to hear from Natalie as well about the Girls in STEM Advisory Council. It'd be awesome to get those slides up because today we're going to be discussing some important terminology that's pertaining to this whole discussion about gender equity and gender equality. And I guess that's also a sneak peek of what we'll be talking about. And then diving into some statistics and then having a panel discussion with all of us. So great that we have those slides there. If we could go to the next slide onto our terminology, I'll pass it off to Maria to get us started.
Thanks so much, Namira. Hi, everyone. It's Maria, already introduced by Karthik. So I'm going to be going into the first 2 terms that you can see on the slide. So intersectionality and then underrepresented. So intersectionality, a term coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw, means the complex cumulative ways in which the effects of multiple forms of discrimination, such as racism, sexism, and classism, combine, overlap, or intersect, especially in the areas of marginalized individuals or groups. So in this case, the intersectionality, since we are talking about International Women and Girls in STEM Day, the intersectionality is around gender lines, but also around racial lines, and also around like ability lines, because people are made of so many different identities. And then now, so into the term underrepresented. So this term means exactly as it states. It just means inadequately represented in a subject group or area. So again, and Puri is going to go more into this with her statistics, but it just means not as represented the way they should be in a group or in proportion to the total number of people in that group, a very low number. So yeah, now I'm going to hand it over to Namira to handle the next 2.
Thanks, Maria. I think those were some really great explanations. And I think sometimes we talk a lot about the statistics and about the current state of where women are in STEM and in science right now. But it's really important to discuss these terms such as underrepresented and intersectionality, and next going into equity and equality to consider why we might not have as many women in science or in STEM as we'd want. So equality and equity used to be these terms that would really confuse me all the time because they pretty much look the same, but I think you can see this one term that's pretty much embedded into equality, and that's meaning equal. So this whole concept of equity is treating, well, I guess I'll go to equality first. I think it's a bit easier to explain in that it's really treating everyone the same regardless of their needs, and those could be intersectional needs, as Maria was just talking about. whereas equity is treating everyone differently based on their needs. So it's really looking at the gaps in between, say, whether it's men and women, or maybe it's Black folks and white folks, or whoever it may be. There are a lot of gaps in between different demographics of people and different populations. And so equity is this concept of bringing together those gaps and trying to reach equality. So a lot of the time we talk about gender equality because we want for women and men to have the same opportunities, and non-binary folk as well. But right now we're not really at that stage where there are a lot of different disparities that affect the state of where women are right now in terms of science. And so gender equity is the process that's going to get us to achieving equality. And so I was just hearing you talk about scholarships and ones for women in science and STEM. And I think this is a bit of a sneak peek of what we'll be talking about later on. But First Canada, for example, offering these scholarships to women who might have not had the same opportunities as men or as other people in terms of when they're growing up and being exposed to STEM. This is a perfect example of equity there. So I think now we're ready to go on to the next slide. And Ridhi's going to be talking to us about a few statistics that really show you what these terms mean.
Thank you, Namira and Maria. So here's some statistics of women in STEM, and we're also going to be touching on the STEM gap. In 2016, women made up 34% of STEM bachelor holders and 23% of science and technology workers aged 25 to 64. And if you look at the bar graph, here's just some data collected of women in different STEM fields. And as you can see, men outnumber women in various STEM fields because of the STEM gap. Now, the STEM gap starts off with gender stereotypes and unconscious bias and underestimations. Now, gender stereotypes are assumptions that are made up from someone's gender. And for women, it really is hard because it does push us back by a lot. And we do get underestimated by a lot because of these gender stereotypes. And a good example of a stereotype is girls can't do math. Another part of it is male-dominated culture. Now, when you look at the bar graph, you can see how males dominate different STEM fields. And because of this, it creates a very male-dominated culture, which leads to exclusion, and where women cannot really participate in conversations because they're often excluded. And it also leads to interruptions where they're interrupted because of this male-dominated culture, which interruptions are basically like microaggressions, but they do contribute to this culture. And then we have fewer women role models because the STEM fields, so many STEM fields are dominated by men. It's really hard for young girls to find representation growing up. And so because of this, a lot of girls don't see themselves entering STEM fields because of the lack of representation. And so because of the STEM gap, we see that a lot of women are not entering the STEM fields at all. And however, it's so important to consider creating safe spaces for women in STEM. And FIRST is doing an amazing job of encouraging more women in STEM through the Girls in FIRST weekends and other opportunities. It's just amazing how FIRST is really trying to encourage more women in STEM. And a cool fact is that FIRST women alumni are more likely to declare majors in engineering and science than their peers. And compared to their peers, FIRST female alumni are more likely to take coursework in engineering and computer science. They're 3.7 times more likely to take a course in engineering and 5.3 times more likely to take a course in computer science. And this just goes to show that we can definitely solve the STEM gap and get more women involved.
Thanks, Ridhi. I'm really glad that you spoke about all those. And I think it's important to realize that it's a bit of a cycle in that we have these stereotypes and the effects of these unconscious biases that we have that might discourage women from entering STEM fields. But then when women do enter STEM fields, and sometimes they face adversity in the workplace because there isn't that good space for them. So now I think we want to go into a discussion just among ourselves. We wanted to talk about some forms of adversity that we might have faced, and I know that we've all had pretty unique experiences with that. So to focus on the adversity, but also on how we might have gotten out of these situations of adversity, followed by a great conversation about support systems. So maybe we could go to you first, Maria, if that would be okay.
Sure. So I guess I'll just start off the conversation. So I think something that some some of the women viewers on this stream might be able to relate with is the low numbers of women that are often found on first teams, unfortunately, because of some of the such as like gender stereotypes and exclusion that that Rita has mentioned in her previous um, in her previous presentation. And so something that I struggled with a bit, especially in the earlier years when I was just starting out, was being one of the only girls on my team. This led me to feel really isolated and feel like I wouldn't actually get the respect that I deserved, because even though I had the skills or I was actively trying to gain the skills, I was still like barred by these stereotypes that the other people on the team had about me. And this actually made me feel really down. And at one point, I even considered quitting robotics just because of that. But I'm actually really glad that I was able to find a support system in my dad. He actually works in STEM, he works in IT. And so he's been a huge advocate for women in STEM and, you know, pushing me to continue for my goals and letting me know that, you know, sometimes you just have to block out the noise and it can be hard and difficult, but your skills will prevail over everything. And I think just through that and, you know, slowly more girls coming onto the team, because my team and mentors actually made a concentrated effort to get more girls on the team. I think that actually really inspired me. And, you know, being around other girls who came onto the team who were so passionate about it as well. And we were able to kind of come together as a group and, you know, work together and stand up for one another when other people on the team were making sly comments. I think that really helped me. But yeah, and that actually kind of relates to the initiative that's going to be talked about later with dads and daughters in STEM, which is really cool. So that's one place where I found a support system. But now I'd like to pass it back to Namira to maybe share her story.
Sure. Thank you, Maria. I think it's really important for you to be sharing this, but I think it's hard as well, especially talking about our experiences in robotics. And I think that's something that we got to do at previous Girls in First weekends as well, which has been just so amazing. But I had a bit of an opposite experience with robotics because I joined a team that was 80% young women and the 20% were men, because it was started by these two girls and they're on FLL teams before. So I was feeling really comfortable with that when I first joined first in grade 10. But then I remember going to my first competition and I was on drive team. I was an operator, and I feel like I'll never forget this moment. But but before you go into a match, you usually have a discussion with the other teams. And I came up because I was operator with the board and everything. And the first thing the guys asked me on the other team were, "Where's the drive team?" Because they had just assumed that I wouldn't be on the drive team. And I'm here holding this thing. It's pretty obvious I'm on the drive team. But I had no idea how to respond to that because I felt so shocked. And all of a sudden I was questioning myself and thinking, like, should I really be here? Should I be on this drive team? Do I know what robotics is? And then before I went into all those thoughts, one of my team member is really a male ally in the situation, came up and said, she is on the drive team. She's an awesome operator and she's been in this role for a while. I'm just the drive coach. I don't really do anything here. I'm just here for support. And so he was there for me in that time. And I think if it weren't for him, it would have been a really difficult situation for me. And then later on, I think one of the mentors who had kind of seen that had a discussion with those boys. And this was at Worlds too, I think. So in our rookie year, we got to go to Worlds and I was so excited. But I remember being so distraught by that one experience. But then in retrospect, I think about that, how that one statement from my team member made such a huge difference to me, just speaking up that way when I was really at a loss for words, which if you know me, I talk a lot. And that doesn't really happen to me very often. But it was really great to have that team member there, and it's really impactful for me.
It's really great, Namira, that support system was there. I think what I find, you know, as a dude, and it's one of those things where I've heard so many stories like this from young women in first who've experienced these sorts of things. And I think what really astonishes me is how well everyone handles these things. And in one way, it shows composure, but on the other way, it shows, wow, you're used to this. This is the norm that these sorts of things are happening. Where, I find often when men hear these stories, be like, oh, if that happened to me, I'd be so upset, I'd be enraged. And it's because we haven't had to deal with that. And I've never at a robotics competition had someone just be like, oh, you can't possibly be the strategist, like never. That's never been a thing. And so it's important to hear these stories, but it's so cool that someone on your team was able to support you and you were able to feel better. But it's also really cool that this wasn't something you experienced until you went to Worlds, that your team provides such a nourishing atmosphere and it's, well mixed and there's a lot of diversity represented there. So that's really, Really nice to hear, Mira.
I agree. It's all about creating that environment. And I think after that, I felt really empowered to try to empower other young women that way and try to be that support system for others. And I also went up to my friend later on, or my team member, and I said, thank you for doing that. Because sometimes we just don't realize how much those little statements mean. So it really made such a huge difference. And I think next we'll go on to Riddhi, if you want to share an experience there.
Thank you, Namira. I'm really glad that you had like a really good support system. For me, my support system was my older sister, Raj. This situation happened before I joined my robotics team, and I was in the 9th grade, and my teacher thought it would be a great idea to bring everyone down to the college fair. And there's this one college which was promoting a really good space program, and I was really interested in it. And two guys walked up to me, and they first started talking to me, and then they just went on about how if I were to get accepted into like a science program, it would only be because I'm a girl and I would be getting shortcuts. And so after that, I kind of was shocked in the moment, and I went away and started waiting for my teacher in a specific waiting area. And then my teacher came up to me asking me what I was looking at. And so I showed him the pamphlet with the space program, and he took like 30 seconds to look at the program. And then he looked at me, and then he was like, yeah, right. And then he gave me back the pamphlet, and then he just walked away. And in the moment, I was like, wow, like this, like that happened to me 3 times in the same hour. Um, and I was just like really shocked, and I was upset too, because it was like I was working hard, but that all of that hard work would just be like thrown away because apparently I would be getting shortcuts. And so I talked to my older sister Raj about it, and she really did um, motivate me to speak up for myself. She taught me so much from that one experience. She taught me that this won't be my last experience with microaggressions or any comments like that, but she did give me the courage to start speaking up for myself. And she was one of like, she did encourage me to join the robotics team at my school. And with my robotics team, I found like an amazing support system with my mentors and my peers on the team. And so I'm really grateful for my sister Raj and the support system that she gave me.
Hey, Rudy, I want to say 2 things based on that. Well, actually 3. Number 1, your sister's awesome, and she's great, and great announcer for us as well. But we hear the term microaggressions a lot, and sometimes I think that that term, as important as it is, it minimizes the impact these microaggressions can have. Because when you hear microaggressions, you think small, but something like that can be so discouraging. And if you didn't have the strong older sister to support you, it could have totally changed so many things in your path, and especially if you had 3 of those in one day, imagine how that compounds over time. And so that's, astonishing. But the other piece is, we have a lot of viewers for the show, and I want everyone to hear this clearly. There are no women who are getting into science and technology and STEM programs because they're women. That is not a thing. You know how sometimes people say, oh, well, all stereotypes come from somewhere. This is not a thing. Women are consistently discouraged from these programs. And if anything, that discouragement makes it easier for men to get in because there's fewer women applicants. So I just wanted to just cut that down before someone's like, oh, well, I know someone so-and-so. Stop it. That's not a thing that is happening. And it's really important that we don't let those sort of misnomers, flourish in any sort of way. So just wanted
Thanks,
to throw
Karthik.
no problem.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah,
sure for, oh, sorry, Mahat, keep
Oh,
going.
sorry. I was just going to add on that I think a lot of us, when we're applying to universities too, we talk to like our peers who are in these like programs, whether it be engineering or even like any STEM-based programs. And I remember talking to one of my friends and him telling me that, oh, I have this average, but I think you can get in with a lower average because you're a girl. And so I made this face, like I was like, are you sure? He's like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I'm just like being honest because that's how it is. And I think like I think really it's amazing that you have a sister who can really support you. And I want like any women who's interested in the STEM field listening to like this conversation to really know that like I think sometimes even as women we don't want anything easier because we've worked hard. We want the opportunities because we've worked hard, not because we're a girl or not because we're a woman in STEM, not because we're underrepresented or a minority. And I think sometimes even just like these small things, like Karthik said, like some of these microaggressions can have bigger impacts just because like these small things really like add up in like your brain and you can continuously think about them. So I think, Harley, thank you for sharing that story. That was really powerful.
Back to you, Namira.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Mahak, for speaking to that. I think I've definitely heard the same while applying for post-secondary right now as well. And again, I usually brush those off, but then when they add up, you really start to feel the weight of that. And I think that goes back to this concept of allyship as well, and sort of assessing the amount of power that you have in a room, or that privilege that you have in a room. That determines whether you can be a great ally as a teacher, or maybe it's a friend who's a guy, or whomever it may be. And this can apply to so many aspects of our life. And I really appreciate these stories that we're sharing, because I think that this is hard to share this, but it's really inspiring too. And speaking of inspiring, I wanted to go to Natalie next, because I know, Natalie, you had a story that you want to share, and you know how inspiring you are to all of us with everything that you do and how far that you've come. So it'd be great to hear from you as well.
Sure, thank you. I guess right back at you. This discussion tonight is so important, and the sharing that's already happened here amongst this group is going to be support for others that are listening that may not have support and that are experiencing similar issues, that don't know where to turn. And hearing all of you describe the things that you've experienced, how you handled it, and that it's unfortunately, sort of normal, and this is the way you need to deal with it when you run into these things, will help others. I wish it wasn't something anyone had to deal with anymore, but it still shows up, right? So thank you for doing this. I guess I've been fairly fortunate along the way from my academic career and my professional career to have had really great support. So when I was going into university, I was thinking engineering, and I had support from my family and actually from my dad quite a bit that said, yes, go for it. He was a small business owner and didn't want to see me kind of go down that struggle. He was like, no, go for it. You can do it. And I had great support from my dad there. And then, even professionally, the company that I work for at Lakeside really has been very supportive and inclusive, and values diversity. So really I've been fortunate. So I don't have like a long list, but I definitely have things that I run into, right? Even if you work for the best employers that win awards, there's there's a diverse group of people that you work with, right? And so just because the employer standards are one thing and values in the company are one thing, you still run into people that maybe have different views, different biases, right? That show up. So I've definitely seen it, and so the example I wanted to provide is about being in meetings, and when I speak up, sometimes I feel my voice is not heard. And I feel like I was clear. I feel like I was speaking English, and I know they heard me, but just whatever my suggestion was didn't resonate. And then later on in the meeting, have the exact same idea be spoken by one of my male peers, and in that moment to have it recognized, be praised by others in the room, really latched onto. And then I'm thinking, like, I swear I just said that. I know I said those words. Wow. And so, that's happened a number of times, and it's frustrating, it's discouraging, and like Namira, like you said, right, you're shocked in the moment. You don't even know what to do, right? You're kind of at a loss for words. You're not sure what to do, and so that's something that I've been working on and trying to find some new strategies, and some that were talked about at the last Girls in First weekend that Kim Cooper talked about actually, and Dr. Imogen Ko talked about, is really focusing on using less tentative language when I'm speaking. So I'm trying to figure out, what can I do differently? If people aren't hearing me, what can I do, right? I can't just continue to blame everybody else in the room. Can I impact this somehow? What control can I take here? So using less tentative language, less maybes, less, maybe, could we, probably, should, I don't, trying to remove all of that from my language. That's hard. Trying to be concise and get to the point quickly, because if I ramble, generally people will tune out. And really trying to speak based on facts and try to remove emotion from what I'm talking about, because that also might get, have people sort of tune out and go, she's just, she's too emotional about this, and they kind of might lose interest. So trying to focus in on the way I communicate. And I think that's made some difference. I've also recently noticed that some of the men in the room have started to step up as allies. And so I've been very fortunate to have a couple members of the senior leadership team, will kind of second my suggestions, right? Oh, Natalie, you made a good point when you said this, and I really liked this, or, that's started to happen too. And so that has helped. So, I think we're making progress, but I'm trying to do what I can to make some adjustments myself. And in terms of support, when I have those days when those meetings go that way, really I come home and I talk with my husband, and he's been a great ally and a great support at home to help me remember that my voice does add value, that there is I should continue to speak up, and has helped me with some strategies as well.
Natalie, thanks so much for sharing that, because I think often, and this happens in all sorts of regards, people kind of assume that when they're facing difficulties, it's like, oh, yeah, this is because of me, and this is a me thing.
Yeah.
And so often they forget that people who are really successful out there, and are well established in their careers and are doing big things, still face the same struggles. And, in one way, it's like, oh, they still struggle too. It's like, yes, but on the other hand, it shows that you can come past this, but like, this happens to everyone. It's not, if you're feeling this way and you've had these sorts of incidents, it's not because of you. It's not because, oh, maybe if I was just more assertive, and maybe if I was louder, and maybe if I was more confident, and maybe if I was more like her or more like him. It's not that. This is not the fault of you. It's the fault of the people around you, or society, or, we could go into all the other factors, but it's not you.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's tricky, right? Because it's hard to, get everybody else in the room to change with you. But you make excellent points, and your support even tonight in this conversation is excellent and is helpful, and means a lot as well. So the resilience that everybody's building now, all these experiences that you all described, that resilience will pay you dividends in the long run. So great job.
We really appreciate you sharing these tips for us, Natalie. In an ideal scenario where there was gender equality, then we wouldn't have to speak up for ourselves, and we wouldn't have to feel the sense of imposter syndrome, which I think we talked about very early on First Canada Live as well, feeling like, should I really be here? Do I deserve this role? All these questions that wouldn't exist. But I appreciate you sharing those tips and that advice for all of us here on the panel, and for all of our viewers as well. And again, to highlight that importance of allyship. And we can all be allies. We can all be those forces for support and empowerment of our peers and ourselves as well. But the onus of that shouldn't only be on ourselves. We need to be working together for sure. So thank you so much, Natalie, for that.
And Namira, we have a question from chat that actually kind of ties into this. This is from a male who's saying, as a guy, what can I do on a daily basis to help? As a person, I don't feel like I show bias. So I think there's probably a lot of young men watching today who are like, well, I know I'm not sexist, but what can I do to help? Because clearly there's a problem. And so I'd love to hear from anyone. Maybe Natalie, maybe you can start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's sometimes really small things, right? To make sure that, if you're noticing that someone's voice isn't getting heard, to help, right? To step in, because unfortunately, there are those biases there, and people might tend to listen a little closer if it's a man speaking, where we are today. So, if you're seeing that and you want to be, play an active role here as an ally, then absolutely, help those others, help get their voices heard by either repeating, showing support, referencing when they made the point, giving them credit for what they said, and essentially repeating it helps quite a bit. Makes a huge impact.
I think something else as well. I know I've taken a lot of tech classes in high school, and those have been totally male dominated. I took an automotive technology class in grade 9, and I was the only girl there, and also the only grade 9 student. And I remember so many times when I would end that class and I just feel like crying because no one would listen to me. But there was this one guy, Teddy, who would say things in class. He'd say, I think Namir has something to say. And he would give me that voice. And that meant the world to me. It totally changed what that class was to me. And afterwards as well, he would check up on me and say, hey, I noticed that other people seem to be speaking over you. How are you feeling about the class? How can I offer support? And so I think both having that form of allyship both during those situations and afterwards and checking in on people is really important. So that's what I would suggest for sure, because that's how I felt like I've been heard in all those tech classes and robotics too. I'm wondering if anyone else on the Youth Council wanted to speak to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I think something else that's important is also self-reflection, because I feel like sometimes, like when we're speaking about microaggressions and such as that, it's not always like malintentioned. Sometimes it's something that people have just been like conditioned to think is okay because of such as like the gender stereotypes that Rudy discussed growing up. So I think it's always important to like question and like reevaluate some of the internalized biases you might have. And then again, like Namira said, actually checking in with the group that you want to be an ally to or to show allyship with, because that's really communication is the key way you're gonna achieve that.
For sure. Thanks, Maria. And one last thing is to talk to your friend groups too. These whole things about boys will be boys and guys will be guys, please get rid of those. I think that's really important to discuss there. And I think we've had a really great discussion here, and it's been so wonderful to speak to everyone. So I guess to wrap up, if we could go back to the slides, and then I think Julia wanted to talk about these forms of support that we can have during times of adversity. So I'll hand it off to you, Julia.
Thank you. So that was a great discussion. I really loved all the points that were brought up, and I think it was really meaningful. And I think the audience had a good, they can have some nice reflection time like Maria was talking about. So quickly, I'm just going to talk about where you could find support in times of adversity. So if you're facing adversity, if you're noticing someone facing adversity, just some tips to help. So the first one is speaking up, like we mentioned. If you see something that's happening, or if you see someone struggling, it would be great if you feel comfortable enough going to speak up about what you're seeing. So if you're seeing someone get talked down to or something like that, you could go and say, hey, what's going on is not right. And stuff like that. But again, that takes a lot of courage. So if you're not comfortable doing that, there are definitely other ways to help and support. Another great one is to surround yourself with positive environments. So if you're in a negative environment where it is affecting your mental health and it's affecting how you're feeling, definitely try to get yourself out of that negative environment if possible, and surround yourself with people who care about you. Like we were talking about, great support systems. So if you feel uncomfortable, maybe you want to go find someone that you're comfortable with. I know that can be difficult as well, but definitely a great way to help you find support, again, is connecting with mentors. So these mentors are great people and great resources that can definitely offer you support. So if you feel comfortable going to talk to a mentor or going to talk to a trusted adult figure, so it doesn't necessarily need to be, let's say you're on a robotics team, it doesn't necessarily have to be your robotics mentor. It could be a teacher that you feel comfortable talking to, or your parents, or any other adult figure in your life. They will be happy to help you find support. And if they don't listen, find another adult that you feel comfortable talking to. Again, resilience. So don't give up. Definitely keep going. Like Reedy said, if she hadn't had that support and hadn't had that push, maybe she wouldn't have continued. So that resilience is really great. And you got to believe in yourself, and you got to trust in your capabilities, which is the next point. So trust in yourself, believe in yourself. Your greatest support will be yourself. At the end of the day, you're the one who knows you best. You know how you're feeling. So really just trust in yourself and believe in yourself. And another one, finally, friends and family. So these friends and family are hopefully the ones that believe in you the most, and hopefully can provide you with so much support and love. So definitely go talk to them, like Reedy's older sister. Circle back to that. So that is a great example.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those, Julia, and also really nicely summarizing our discussion there. I think next, just to sort of, I guess we're nearing the end of our segment, but we'll bring it back to Natalie to talk about the Girls in STEM Advisory Council and some initiatives that you're working on right now.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so just a brief summary. The Girls in STEM Advisory Council was started by FIRST Robotics Canada and brings together members of FIRST, as well as corporate executives and educational institutional leaders. that are really passionate about supporting and advancing education initiatives related to equity, diversity, and inclusion for girls and young women in STEM. And so through this council, we were discussing, research around the positive impacts that dads have on their daughters and how it has been shown to increase the likelihood of girls considering and pursuing education and careers in STEM-related fields. And so it was great to hear Maria's story about her dad's support and how that impacted her, because it really does tie quite nicely into this. So you covered it in one of your stats at the beginning there, really, that half the population is women, yet only 23% hold positions or careers in STEM, and so it's really not even reflective. The scientists, the engineers, the people that are inventing and innovating and developing, all the gadgets that we use every day, the safety in our cars, whatever it is, right? We're not represented in those groups. So the world is sort of still being designed out of balance. And so there really is a need to focus here and to focus as early as possible in correcting this and in getting girls into these careers. And so, we try to think, I was always trying to think, how do I talk to people in high school? Because then maybe they'll apply to these programs. But I think it starts even earlier than that. And this research supports that. And so the research really looks at, fathers' gender stereotypes and how they impact either positively or negatively their daughter's likelihood in pursuing training in math and sciences. So on the kind of negative side, girls' interest in math and science decreases as their father's gender stereotypes increase. So where their fathers hold those typical stereotypes of women, girls tend to, steer away from maths and sciences. And there was a study done in 2015, so it's way out of date now. So I'd be curious, I haven't, looked for an update, but 68% of teen girls interested in STEM said that their dad played a key part in encouraging them. So there's really is some good numbers and good data behind this. And so when we heard this information, it was like, oh my goodness, we got to get this out. We got to share this. This is important information that, everybody, all these parents are out there could be doing something really early with their kids that could really make a difference. And if we wait until high school to start, having these conversations, it's too late. So we developed a presentation, and so you see here on the slide are some of the kind of snippets from the deck that was really meant to be, could the council then take this deck, take it back to our workplaces and share this information in our own organization so that we could quickly get this message out to the number of people that we work with every day, and try to just kind of, how many people can we share this with as quickly as possible. And so we thought we could do it within our organizations. And so this became our Dads for Daughters campaign. And so there's a full presentation deck, and it really includes really practical things that dads can do, and not only dads, uncles, grandfathers, friends of the family. It's that impact of a male role model really on a young girl that is important. And so it includes really simple things that dads can do with their daughters. Books that you can read, movies you can watch together. It doesn't have to be, when we started this presentation, there was a lot of people in the audience saying, well, I don't know how to build a robot, and I don't do this for a living. And there was really even a fear around, well, I don't know how to be a scientist, so I couldn't possibly help my daughter. And it's really, doesn't need to be anything more than, play Lego and, do some home repairs together and teach her how to use some tools and just, get her comfortable with trying things and not doing it right and failing and trying again and just making a mess and all of that. It can be really simple. And that helps build that resilience really early, and that connection to their dad really makes a big difference. And so the goal was with this campaign is to really inform and equip dads with some really easy ways to engage with their daughters. And it's typically in a lunch and learn format. Over lunch, you do it, and we invite all employees to these sessions. So it's not only open to dads that have daughters, everyone comes, because it's important that everybody hears this, because they can tell, they can go back home and talk to, the people in their lives that can have this impact. So it's really, important to increase awareness for everybody. And so we've done this presentation a number of times. We've done it at Lakeside. We did the first one at Lakeside. We've done it at Acon. We've done it at Enbridge and General Motors, and we've received really positive responses. So we're hoping to have the opportunity to visit some more companies with the same campaign.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing, Natalie. This is such an awesome campaign. And I know like my dad isn't in science, he's in international development, but he's been such an advocate for me going into STEM. So this is wonderful that you're running this campaign. I think this will have a tremendous impact on so many young women and the dads too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think
Awesome.
it's also really important for the dads out there to recognize that, because like Namira said, her dad's not in STEM. You don't have to be in STEM to do this type of encouragement. And it's even more important probably because, you know, you see
it's
almost
true.
that predilection of, you know, STEM families of people going in there, but just to be super encouraging is like, hey, this is like, maybe I wasn't the best at math or science, but you are good at it. So you can do this, and, you don't have to be, I think a lot of people sometimes feel limited by, I have to phrase this correctly, but sometimes you see what your parents could do. It's like, oh, if my parents weren't able to do that, my parents couldn't become doctors, how could I be a doctor? Because my parents are like the best people in the world. And so it's really important to just be like, yeah, I want you to surpass me in every possible way. Because I think that kind of is most parents' goals anyways, so just to really state that and say it out loud. All right,
I
Namira.
agree. I definitely agree. Thank you so much, Karthik. And I think we've been talking a lot about these men who are role models in our lives, but I think we'll end this segment by talking about women as well, who are incredible role models in our lives. So if we could, great, we're already on this slide. I'll hand it back to Julia to speak to these amazing women on screen here.
Thank you. And thank you, Natalie, for that great talk about different role models in STEM. As a woman on a first team, I find it very important. I did also want to quickly share a personal story while we're talking about role models. So I am the co-captain of my robotics team, and in that I do a lot of fundraising, and I just thought about it now. So each year our team reaches out to, like, I want to say over 100 different companies, and a lot of those companies we reach out to have male CEOs and like have male owners as the owners of the company. So it's really great to see all these women role models, especially because of all that fundraising I do, and the lack of women there. And I didn't notice it until this year when I was just really reflecting, and it was just really shocking to realize that how many women out there aren't in those leadership positions. So without further ado, I'm going to be talking about these amazing women who are all going to be featured on First Canada's Instagram. So if you want to learn more about those, make sure to go check that out in the future weeks or coming up. So first of all, Dr. Imogen Coe, she is the first woman to chair the Department of Biology at York University, and she is now the founding dean of the Faculty of Science at Ryerson University. She has done so much different advocacy for equity, diversity, and inclusion in STEM, and has won so many different awards, such as Canada's top 100 most powerful women. So it's really great. And she's also on the Girls in STEM Advisory Council. And then Dr. Jaylene Koszelski is a research and development coordinator at Atlantic Industries Limited, as well. She is a first alum on team from Team 772, as well. She is a Dean's List finalist award winner. We also have Julia Hennesburg. She is on the First Canada Executive Advisory Board board member, and she is also on the Girls in STEM Advisory Council, and she is currently the president of Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation, and she helped launch the HB First Robotics for kids with disabilities. Next, we have Dr. Jennifer Horeski. She is a family medicine resident at Grand Strand Medical Center, as well as a first alum from Team 1547. Then finally, we have Vivian Nguyen, who is also going to be appearing on the show later. So she is a first alum and a mentor for teams 1241 and 1285, and she is the first Canada woman alumni to win the Woody Flowers finalist award. And then Jennifer Ladipo. She started the STEM Girl, which is an initiative aimed at encouraging young girls to be themselves in a feminine and a scientific way through storytelling. And she's also published 2 books. And then we also have Leslie Buckley, who is a assistant professor in the Department of Radiology at the Faculty of Science at University of Ottawa. And I think I'm passing it off to Namira to talk to about Dr. Janel Catlin.
Yes, so we just have a couple more women on the slide, but of course there's so many other incredible role models here. Here we have Dr. Janel Catlin, and so she recently joined FIRST as our International Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which is extraordinary. And prior to FIRST, she's worked on starting and developing STEM education programs internationally, all across the world, really. So that's been amazing. And I'll pass it off to Maria to talk about Dr. Eugenia Dodu.
Yes, so Dr. Eugenia Dodu is a Black Canadian chemist. She actually has a PhD in chemistry and a graduate from U of T. So she actually founded, she's the co-founder and CEO of Visions of Science Network for Learning, or VOSNL, which aims to empower youth from low-income communities to engage in STEM. And she's been personally really inspiring for me because I had the opportunity to listen to one of her speeches at a Girls in STEM conference hosted by FIRST Canada a couple of years ago. And she's actually encouraged me to do more work because of more time I had during the COVID-19 pandemic to do more outreach to my community, or to the community in Toronto and help with those STEM initiatives. So yes, and right now I'll just pass back to Karthik.
Well, thank you so much to all the panelists today. This was just some really great discussion. Like we went from, defining some terminology and, learning that way, but then also to hear all your stories, of the adversities you faced and how you've overcome, and the importance of allyship is just been really, really powerful. So thank you so much for being here. And especially to our Youth Council panelists, thank you for being the next generation of role models.